operated on 19 and 23 for appendicitis. And they didn't have a hospital in Lebanon. And old Doc Thompson had rented a little old house, just 2 rooms upstairs over this house. The people lived downstairs. And went up a real steep stairs, and there was a room on that side. There was a kitchen, and a room on this side where he done the operating. And the night before, I slept with the nurse in the bedroom while they fumigated the big room. And the next morning, they operated on me in there. And then they cleaned everything up and had a bed set up in there when I come to. And then the doctor wouldn't let me go back out home. And there was 8 men come and carried me from there to Uncle Will's house down on Madison.
And this is what year?
1923.
1923, and you had your appendix out.
Yeah, and I stayed there for about a month before I went back to Oakland and went back home.
That's quite an experience.
Because my appendix was nearly ruptured and it had laid against my intestine, and they wouldn't give me no castor oil or anything for it would rupture, break through where the appendix had laid on my bowels.
Oh. Yeah.
And so that's the reason. And then I took chills and fever, and my fever was 104, and they called the doctors back, and they nearly had a fight. Old Doc Thompson and Dr. Hamilton and Dr. Bennage. It was the 3 that was there when they operated on me, and Hamilton, I guess, was the doctor put me in the hospital. Anyway, and the next day my fever was down, and the next day my fever was up, and I just chilled and had a fever again. And then Dr. Thompson told me after your dad and I was married that they were getting ready to cut me open the next day if my fever, and then he asked if I'd ever had malaria, chills, and fever, and we had. We had nearly every spring or winter, fall, we'd have about a malaria, chills, and fever. And the doctor, to cure it, he had my mother get a bottle of strychnine.
Poison.
Yeah. And every day she give a start it with 1 drop of strychnine. The next day is 2 drops. Next day 3, on up to 15 drops. But if we begin to bloat under our eyes, why, she's to drop down a drop. Like if we done that about the 11th drop, well then the next would be 10 and on down. And that's what cured the malaria, chills, and fever on us. But it's still in my blood. And they made a blood test of me in the hospital one time. Dr. Durham come and asked me if I had ever had any liver trouble or malaria or something, and I told him I had, and I said, why? And he said, well, it shows up in your blood, and it always will, and said, don't never give blood transfusion, because that malaria is still in my system.
Okay, now what kind of, how did they put you under? What kind of anesthetics did you use?
Ether.
They used ether.
The nurse gave me the ether, or I don't know, I guess one of the doctors did. But he said they was going to operate on me again because he had lost a little pair of scissors.
Yeah,
and he thought that he accused Dr. Bennage of stealing them.
Yeah.
And so they thought they'd left them in me.
Yeah.
And that's the reason I was having those chills and fever. But when I'm skipped today, and then the next day I had chills and fever again, well, then
they figured out
that it was caused from the malaria, and the ether would make me happy. It would bring about it again.
Yeah, they didn't have x-rays then.
Lord, no.
No x-rays, okay. Okay, so that's 20. So tell me about the depression.
Well, when we first got married, your dad was making $15 a week.
$15 a week, and that was 19 and 27.
And then we took and had, we had always had a big garden. He put out that big garden back there, and we had our own potatoes and everything. And I canned, because I'd been raised to can stuff on the farm. And so we canned all that stuff. And then when his father died in 1944, he was only making $25 a week. And we had all you kids. And the doctor took care of me. I could go up there as many times as I want to, and it didn't cost me nothing, because the doctor took care of you up until your baby's born, and then it was only $25, and they were delivered at home.
Okay, what doctor was that?
Doc Thompson, all but Frida and Doc Summers delivered her, and it's all delivered on Hay Street up there, but Frida, she's down in Pearson.
What was the number on Hay Street?
508.
508 Hay Street.
And, but it's changed now, they changed the numbers.
They changed the number. How did they do that?
And Frida was born down in the Walser house in 1941.
What about the depression? Do you remember? I remember bums coming at the door.
Yeah, we had a lot of bums coming through there, and they always seemed to hit our place, but I never did turn one of them down as long as I had something to feed him on.
We weren't too far from the railroad tracks.
No. And the eggs was about a penny a piece, 12 cents a dozen. Bacon, 15, 20 cents a pound. Everything was cheap, because nobody had any money.
Right.
And the kids' clothes, you could buy feed sacks. They had colored feed sacks that the feed come in, and you could get them. Then the people, they'd take them back to the store and sell them for maybe 10 cents. And I'd pay maybe 15 or a quarter for a great big feed sack and make dresses out of them. Grandma made clothes for the kids, the girls. And
what kind of celebrations did they have?
Whatever 4th of July, they had a big celebration in Lebanon. We used to come in the wagon and cook stuff the day before and bring it in a box. And here we'd have, I don't know what we did have, but I remember coming to town. And I remember coming in town, and we'd put the horses in the stable back of the bakery there. There's a barn back there by the Old Turnbull Hotel, and we would go in the bakery and eat. And I never dreamt then I'd ever.
Mary Kaffenberger.
And Mr. Lippelman lived out there at Oakland, and then they went and bought the Frisco Cafe, and so court week was coming up, and he
What week?
Court, when they had court, and he needed a waitress, and so the dad sold him wood, trying to drop wood in, and Dad cut ties and sold ties, railroad ties and things, and so he wanted to know if I'd come in there and work in the restaurant during court week, and I did, and that's how I met your dad.
Oh, you worked as a waitress.
And he delivered papers, brought papers over there, and he'd always, they needed supper or
He delivered papers?
Yeah, they had newspapers. He'd bring the paper over there to Lippelman's. You know, they took a paper and took the
But he was a baker.
He was a baker. And his father was a baker. And Louis, Daddy only had about 7th, 8th grade education. 8th grade, I guess.
Daddy?
Because, not my father, but
Yeah.
your father.
Yeah, okay.
And, he, had to quit school and go to work in the bakery because Louis was called to war.
Okay, Louis went into the First World War.
Yeah.
And
And Gus was, died, he was older than Louis, but he had died of, broken typhoid fever. He had, rheumatism, and they sent him over to take hot baths in Oklahoma, somewhere. And he had taken this broken typhoid fever, and he was getting over it and was able to be out and walking around in the yard. And a girl had went to the store and come back by there, and she had a sack of apples, and she said, "Would you like to have an apple?" And he took it and ate it, and with typhoid fever, your intestines are all just raw. And they're not supposed to eat anything solid. Now that's what killed him.
too solid at this one, right?
And he was engaged to be married to Stella Hester. He died, and Louis was engaged to be married to Louis Shepherd when he died. That killed him. And she had said her wedding day, they didn't ship his body back right away. He was killed in Germany, in the Oregon forest. That like that. And they didn't ship, well, if they'd have had penicillin, like they have now, well, he probably wouldn't have died. But
He died in